Local food isn't new, it's been around us all along. Listen to chefs, farmers, and like-minded folks talk about what local food means or could mean to you. Right here with your host, Julie Cushine-Rigg, and Fresh on the Fly, where we got you covered when it comes to everything you ever wondered about local food. Listen in as guests also take a food question on the fly. Come on, let's get fresh.
Hello and welcome again to Fresh on the Fly. This week, what I thought we would do is take a little break from talking to chefs and talk about vegetable gardening and a couple other things. With spring on the way, maybe many of you were thinking about doing a vegetable garden or bumping up one that you had from previous years, or just kind of curious to see if you want to look into it. So here's a little glimpse into what it took for us to get a little garden going. Everything from seeds to the plants and harvest and all the way through. Take a little glimpse. So up here in the hills of Rensselaer County in upstate New York, my husband and I have a little place that we like to call Pointer Ridge, and a little bit of a nod to my Irish heritage with the flag here. And Pointer Ridge does refer to, we've got a couple of pointer dogs, and you'll meet one of them in one of the slides here coming up. Let's take a look beyond the flag and see what's happening. We've got some bird feeders out that we like to cater to. Our birds that stop on by, all the wildlife we try to cater to as much as we can that's sustainable and good, being good stewards to the land. But until spring really pops with the buds and the everything else that the birds like and the flowers, we do get them some seed and leave it out there for them. It'll be coming down pretty soon. We're just coming up in the end of March and spring is just starting, so stuff is starting to pop and we'll be taking down the seeds pretty soon. But up here, past that, we've got a little garden that we started. I don't have any pictures of what the first year was like about 6 years ago. Because we're on a mountain, there's a lot of bedrock underneath, and not too deep either, and it doesn't take long for you to hit rock. And we wound up planting on mounds of dirt, and it was all fenced in, but still, I mean, it kept out the wildlife, but it really was a tough go the first year. We've since evolved. What we wound up doing, and you'll see in the next slide here after Bauer greets you at the garden gate almost. He could open it for you, I'm sure. We moved over to raised beds pretty quick. We realized that it would be pretty difficult to dig down, but we had moved here in mid-spring, so time was not on our side the first year or so. We did go to raised beds for a lot of reasons. It's so much easier with the weeds. You do give yourself a path here, places to move around the bed so that you can weed and harvest and in the beginning too, plant, of course. It's so much easier than having kind of a wide open area within the garden and without kind of a path in the middle or something where you're just trying to access everything. But through the garden gate here, you'll see right now what the garden looks like. It's not looking that great, only because it's the end of winter and we've got just some things that did overwinter. I was really pleasantly surprised to see that there were some greens that made it under the snow, and I cleared the snow away a few days before this picture was taken. And I did eat a couple of sprigs of spinach in there, and they had overwintered, and it was delicious. And then I turned over one of the leaves. I turned over all of them before I started eating it, and one had a couple of grubs on it. So we know that stuff is starting to get active, and it's pretty cool to see. And then we'll move on to the next slide. Here's a little view of back down towards the tree and the sign for Pointer Ridge in the house. And we can see off in the distance Berkshire Mountains. In this slide, we've just got the raised beds here and some leftovers, and I did take some mums and I put them in there to see if they'll grow back. We'll see what happens with that. But in the upper right hand corner of the garden, we've got a little compost area, and we try to do this all year, and winter becomes pretty tough because it gets a little snowy and icy out there, but we try and we do pretty good. And the next slide, you're going to see some, looks like broken hockey sticks, and indeed it is. Our son plays hockey, and my husband plays hockey as well, and I've been known to hit the ice a couple of times for a parent-kid game. Many years ago, it was a lot of fun. So we do have and continue to get a bunch of broken hockey sticks, so we kind of use what we have, and you'll see how we use those in a couple of slides going down here. And we've also got some things that we can anchor plants such as like peas and pole beans and tomatillos on like a trellis kind of thing. Also, we've got next to the vegetable garden, we've got blueberries. And beyond the blueberries, there's an asparagus patch. It takes a few years. Many of you probably either tried or heard that asparagus takes a couple of years to get going. And it really does, but it's oh so rewarding. And they multiply like mad after you get them going. Another thing that we do is some raspberries. So we've got a raspberry patch here. And we've got some sunflowers that we plant every year. And then we leave them up right through winter and we let the birds pick at them, late fall into early winter. And by Halloween or so, all those seeds are gone. Indoors, of course, we're starting out with some seeds. And we are doing everything from peppers and tomatoes. We won't start lettuce inside. We may a couple of weeks ahead of when we're going to plant outside, which is probably around May 1st up here in upstate New York, because the lettuce you can sow right into the raised beds. But things like tomatoes, some cucumbers, a lot of the peppers, that sort of stuff we do get an early start on. And what we also are trying this year is a lot of herbs and cut flowers. So we've got our hands pretty full with that. It involves the grow lights, monitoring the water on the trays daily, of course. We don't feed them any fertilizer or any plant food or anything like that. We're just getting these guys a head start to go outside. That's about it. Once the weather starts to get warm, you'll bring them out for a couple of days. Those of you who garden probably know all about this, but in case you don't do this level of gardening, and we've only started a couple of years ago, you just bring the seedlings out for maybe a couple hours on a nice warmer sunny day, like high 50s into the mid 60s and above. You'll leave them out and then you'll bring them in after a couple hours. That way they've been exposed to some of the elements, and then you leave them out a little bit longer every day. And eventually by the time the planting season really kind of starts and you're safe from any frost, you can get out there into your raised beds and put your seedlings out and start sowing your seeds for your lettuce, your spinach. And that's what this slide shows here. And then you can see we've got a couple of things that started. These seedlings that you saw on the previous slides under the grow lights are pretty big by that point. You can think of a vegetable, we may or may not have it. It's eggplant. We've done onion sets. We've done leeks. We've done all kinds of lettuce. There's so many varieties of tomatoes and peppers. We like it spicy up here on the mountain. We do a lot of hot peppers too. One thing we did one year was we planted Scotch bonnets and we planted habaneros. You only need really one or two of those plants, we found out. We did make hot sauce, but it was overkill. You really, unless you're feeding an army or something, literally, you really can go easy on those hotter ones. You can go one or two plants. That'll do you for a year, because you can get into preserving these things later on, canning, freezing, all kinds of stuff, and that's a whole different area. You take a look here, there are those hockey sticks, and they're holding up some tomatoes. It's quite fun. I go out, and I didn't expect to see that when my husband had put them up, but I see hockey sticks all over the house from one use or another, and this is one of them. Once these tomato plants get bigger, though, you do have to go in, and depending on the variety of tomato, you'll go in and you'll snip some back so they grow properly and have more of a yield. Eventually, we get down the road a little bit here in the season, and we start to harvest stuff, which is awesome. A lot of the tomatoes, and we've done carrots a couple times. You would think it's really easy to plant carrots, but they do require a little bit sandier of a soil, so they can work their way down into the soil a little bit more. They're a little bit more difficult to grow, but we are going to try them again this year. Maybe I'll have some secrets by the end of this season, but they're delicious. They're absolutely, it's night and day compared to what you're going to get in the grocery store. Of course, not the farmer's markets. The farmer's markets are going to have delicious carrots and everything anyway. But compared to your supermarket carrots, this is the only way to go. So we'll see how it goes this year. So we've got some tomatoes early on and some peppers and a few herbs and that kind of thing. And then about midsummer, we start to see the raspberries going. By the end of maybe August or so, mid-August, if we've started our cucumbers pretty early, right around now, we're going to be starting cucumbers at the end of March. Or we get some of the plants right from the garden centers, and that's absolutely another way to go. And we do some of that. We supplement with a lot of plants from our local hardware nursery stores, and that's a great way to support local as well. So we do a lot of pickling, we do a lot of canning, and then one of the other things that we're actually doing right this time of year, right at the end of March, we've drawn sap off of our sugar bush, and here's one example. This sugar maple is not right in the middle of the woods, but we've got a little area that under the maple we like to sit and look out over the mountains. And we do get sap off of that tree, out of that tree. And we've got probably 50 or so trees that were in our sugar bush this year, and we doubled a little bit about what we've done last year. We've been at this is our 4th year. And we seem to come out with about 8 gallons or so of syrup, which is, probably, I can't do the math in my head real quick right now, but it's somewhere around 200 gallons or something. So to do that, it's all, of course, in the evaporator. You're boiling out there for days, but it is kind of fun. It makes everything just smell great. And not only do we do the syrup, but we discovered one year by accident, we had a pan of some syrup that went over a little bit, and then it cooled, and we thought we lost the pan and everything else. And I Googled it because I thought there's got to be something you can do. Maybe if we heat it up, make it into candy or something. But I discovered, oddly enough, and I didn't even think about it, you can make the maple sugar out of it. So that was another whole process. But essentially what you do is you heat that syrup up once you've got syrup. So we were able to heat up that pan and bring it up to a certain temperature. And then you let it cool down for a couple of minutes. You bring it into your mixer, like your big KitchenAid or handheld or something, and you just let it rip. It looks like it's going to explode. It looks like a big mess for a minute. And then all of a sudden, I swear, it looks like magic and it looks like a trick. And you think it's not going to work. And your whole kitchen is filling up with steam and it's smelling almost like brown sugar with a maple flavor to it. And you look and all of a sudden in your bowl, you've got granulated sugar. It is something else to see. And I'll try and get a video up of that next time. But that really is a little snapshot of what spring is like in upstate New York for a typical gardener. And by no means do we have our handle on this in an expert way. We just do it for our home use. We're sort of hobby, very, very hobby homesteaders, just trying to grow as much as we can. And we also harvest deer off of the land, wild turkey, and we've got some nice trout streams near us, so we do get maybe some fish once in a while, or in the deeper lakes with the ice fishing, and we can get the rock bass or perch and all that kind of the white fish. It's a nice pan frying fish in the middle of winter, so that's kind of nice, and freeze it up. And then in the middle of summer, if we're kind of low on fish or some kind of protein in the freezer, we've got plenty of fish and venison or wild turkey and that sort of thing. This is a family affair at the moment with getting everything produced, and my dear niece Mackenzie, of course, is taking care of that end. I'm taking care of getting some of the talent, and we've got some more guests lined up for you. My brother is doing the voiceover on the introduction, and it's wonderful. And if you've wondered about the music, we're great music fans here up on Pointer Ridge. My husband and I both love all kinds of music. And our son has also inherited that, and he's in a couple of bands, and he has done the music that you hear at the beginning and at the end for this. At the moment, he's doing something with like a core metal band, and here's a picture of him from a couple weeks ago over in Hartford, Connecticut, and he was doing a gig, and he was kicking it. It was awesome. So all in all, this is a little snapshot of the rigs at Pointer Ridge, and maybe gives you a little bit of inspiration to go out and start a garden, expand what you have maybe. And remember, local food, it's not real far from you, of course, but there's nothing more local than in your own backyard. And even if you have the very small plot, and in my episode with Noah Sheets, I did talk about the small area that he had near the governor's mansion in Albany, where I met him probably 12 years ago. And in such a small area, he's able to grow so many things. And if you look at one of the raised beds in one of the slides from previously, and we'll take a look at that for a second, you see you can fit so many things into one little area. You can do, in the front, you can do some lettuce and spinach, some of your lower growing things, and maybe a couple of pepper plants. Work your way up into some tomatoes or eggplants and some of the taller peppers. And on the back side, you could do a trellis that supports cucumbers, peas or beans, even tomatillos. And you wouldn't think to grow tomatillos in upstate New York, But a couple of years ago, we tried it and we had a really bumper crop, and we made salsa verde. It was delicious. We did start them ahead of time. It was a couple of years ago, and they just took off. And they're one of the things you can leave on the vine for a little while. You don't have to pick them because they do come in like gangbusters. And I did call the family over in California there to see what they do with their tomatillos, because it was the first time we grew them, and I was kind of astounded, didn't know what to do with so many of them. And Brother Mike was saying that you can leave them on the vine for a little while. They have a husk around them, and then you can roast them off, and that's the easiest way. A few other things that are high yield for only a few plants are raspberries. Just a few plants, if you let them go, if you've got the time to wait. We've been able to pick maybe a pint a day, right from maybe the end of July up through the end of, say, August or something, certainly into the early part of September too. Depending on the weather, you may have some that are still on the vine. It looks like if it was going to be warmer, like into October, if you get an Indian summer, you're going to make out like a bandit with the raspberries, probably blackberries as well. We haven't grown blackberries in a while, but the raspberries certainly take off. And it's just like anything else. If you get something established, and especially maybe asparagus, something like that, you're going to see a couple of years later, you've got a really great reward. Think back to over 100 years ago, before industrialized farming took hold in America. Where were we getting our food? We were growing it in our own backyards. We were getting it from nearby farms, very nearby, because people weren't traveling as far to go. They couldn't maybe travel as far to go get food. So you relied on yourself or your neighbors, your very close farms right around you. And that's kind of the way things were done, more or less, before the industrial age of farming. But just think about even a tiny little patio. If you've got a patio, if you've got a terrace, if you've got a little balcony, you can do something like container planting. You can do a couple of tomatoes in a container. You can do some flowers in a flower box or something. You can do herbs. That's a perfect use for maybe a balcony out of an apartment. You can plant some herbs. You could do a basil, grow real tall, but you can snip it back and use it all season long for your tomato sauce, your salads, your pesto, depending on how much you grow. I mean, you can do pesto a couple of times during the summer. You can put in dill, just a little, maybe one plant of dill. They grow pretty tall, and you can have fresh dill for your sauces that you're going to do for your fish. Or if you're going to make pickles, you've got dill pickles, dill for the dill pickles. It's little things like that. And you can take such a small area and grow things beyond what you're thinking. You can grow herbs. You can grow just a couple of plants on the patio or balcony, anything. As always, if you want to submit some questions, we've got the email address there, and we'll have Mackenzie list that under this episode. Feel free to send your questions about gardening, cooking, canning. We've done a little bit about everything from the planting in the early season to sowing seeds right out in the garden when it does become warmer and it's the planting season, right around May 1st. You really don't want to plant too far in advance of that unless you're having an unusually early spring, and certainly nothing really before like April 15th or so, at least up in upstate New York. So that's kind of it in a snapshot. I hope everybody is maybe a little bit more inspired to even start just a little patio, couple of plants, or think about where your food is coming from. And it really does not have to be as local as you think. You'd be surprised what you yourself can plant and what you could find really near to you at your farmers markets. And for plants starting in your own garden, the local hardware store, a lot of Ace and True Value hardware stores have a lot of the spring vegetable plants and a lot of flowers too. And there are some flowers that you can think about, and you can Google or send me a question about companion planting, and some flowers that, like say marigolds, that you might plant around a perimeter to keep some of your pests out. We live on a mountain and we have to fence everything in, otherwise the deer and everything else will be having a really nice buffet. But we enjoy seeing the wildlife too, and like to keep everything safe. So we do have the fencing for the gardens. And this year we're going to be implementing an herb garden. So that will be done, and that'll be on probably another episode down the road here. So keep a lookout for that. Remember, It's all about doing what you're comfortable with, what you want to have in your garden. Maybe you just have a small spot, like I said, or a larger area. Any scale, you can do some gardening. You can reap the rewards all through the summer. There's so many things that carry you right through the summer. Lettuce is one of them. There's so many different varieties of lettuce. And also, there's another area that you might think of, planting squash and pumpkins. That's another whole thing. And watermelons, your muskmelons, your cantaloupes, your honeydews, those are all very doable as well. They may take up a little bit more room. Like, think of a zucchini plant, they're pretty big. But if you've got the room, they're high yield. So I really hope you enjoyed looking a little bit into upstate New York garden and see what it's all about. And I'll probably expand on a few more of these things, like the canning, at some point down the road. And that would be a nice, fun episode. And we also do a lot of strawberry jam, raspberry jam, and preserves and stuff like that. Just always something going on up here in Pointer Ridge. And our dogs are a big part of that as well. Just a little hint for the episode coming up about them. They are bird dogs, and they put dinner on the plate now and again too. And it is delicious. Anyhow, everybody, thank you for listening once again, and stay tuned. Our next episode coming up in a week will be from Four Fat Fowl in Stephentown, New York. And I understand they make some yummy, yummy dairy products. So keep a listen out for that. And until then, happy gardening if that's your thing, or happy hunting for local food. And if you've got any questions, just let us know. Thank you.